What's going on, Rebel family? How's everybody doing tonight? Tonight, I want to get into why brothers should not be fans of other men or fanboys. And it's a thing that seems to be a problem, and in particular on social media, right? That certain fan bases for certain celebrities or athletes, they are just out of hand. But being a fanboy or a fan, sometimes you are not very critical, or you won't be critical um, of a particular person that you are the fan of. And the topic came from just recently saw or I didn't watch the whole video, but I know this video is kind of old, that the roommates are YouTubers or podcasters, content creators on YouTube, called the Roommates. They did a interview with Jordan Peterson, and in that interview, um, I thought there was a little fanboy thing going on there, and Jordan Peterson said something that was, I guess, a bit controversial, and it went against the narratives of some of the talking points in the red pill community, and quite a few red pill content creators had some pushback, but there wasn't really any pushback from the brother giving the interview from the roommates. So I guess I want to start with I'll do it this way. I want to start with defining. Maybe I shouldn't do it that way. I don't think everybody can see that. Let's see. Let's try to do it that way. Let's see. All right. So start off with the definition of a fan. Right? Fan, noun: an enthusiastic devotee as of a sport or a performing art, usually a spectator. An ardent admirer or enthusiast as of a celebrity or pursuant. Can't even speak today. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna look at a couple of different ones here. All right, a fan or fanatic. That's what I always thought a fan was, a fanatic. The word coming from a fanatic. Let's see, maybe that's better. All right, fan or fanatic, sometimes also termed aficionado or enthusiast, is a person who exhibits strong interest or admiration for something or somebody, such as a celebrity or a sports team, genre, politician, book, movie, etc. Right? Etymology: Merriam-Webster, the Oxford Dictionary, and other sources define fan as a shortened version of the word fanatic. Fanatic itself is introduced into the English language around 1550, means marked by excessive enthusiasm and often intense, uncritical devotion. And that's kind of what I want to focus on here. And I went to etim.line, where you have the etymology, etim.line, etim online, where we can look at the etymology here. Same things as saying, so same thing, fanatic, insane person, mad enthusiast, and furious mad, meaning zealous person, a person affected by enthusiasm, um, inclination, liking, so forth, right? Oh, that's fancy. Let's see. Where's the one I was looking for? Probably, yeah, okay. Devotee. Yeah, okay, so, but what I wanted to focus on is that the uncritical, um, what you call it, and then fanboy, right? Fanboy has made it into the lexicon of the people. A male fan, especially one who is obsessive about comics, movies, science fiction, etc. Sports, right? They don't have sports up there, but sports is one, right? And that's probably one of the biggest ones, right? Some of the fan bases on um, social media are just totally insane and totally out of their minds, right? And I want to play a couple of clips. I'm going to get started with a particular clip from Vlad TV. It's about it's in regard to an interview that was done by Vlad with Michael Jai White. He's a actor, martial artist, and he said something that sent the fanboys in, sent the fanboys crazy, right? He stated that he could beat Bruce Lee in a fight, right? And let me see here. Let's get this going here. All right, so here we go.
An interview a while back, which we discussed.
Okay, so in this interview, he asked Vlad is very known. He's known for asking other people that he interviews about something that someone else said in the interview. So he interviewed Michael Jai White. Michael Jai White just off the cuff stated that he could beat Bruce Lee in a fight, right? And so then, of course, he has the actor Timac. He interviews the actor Timac. Timac is an actor who played in the movie. He's Bruce Leroy. What's the name of that damn movie? He was Bruce Leroy in that damn movie. What's that movie called? The Last Dragon, right? It was a movie back in, I think it's 1985, called The Last Dragon. Starred Timac, Vanity, some other people in it, and Timac was the lead actor. Very good martial artist at the time, and good looking dude. Thought that guy was gonna go on to superstardom. It didn't happen for him, but he idolized Bruce Lee in the movie, right? He called himself Bruce Leroy. He's a black dude that thought he was Bruce Lee, basically, right? So he's interviewing Timac, and so he's gonna ask him about the Michael Jai White comment, what Michael Jai White stated, right? So this is where the interview picks up, just to give clarification here.
I remember Michael Jai White. He did an interview a while back, which we discussed in our interview as well, where he said that he could have beaten Bruce Lee.
Oh, he should have never said that, but he apologized for that. He should have never said that.
If I had said that amongst fighters, they'd completely understand. There's not one real fighter that would dispute what I said.
Right.
Because
a 220
they know,
pounder versus a 130 pounder.
Yeah, at the time I said I was 235, but it's like
100 plus pounds.
Exactly.
Okay, so he's giving context, right? So Michael Jai White is 6'2", 235 pounds at the time that he said it. Bruce Lee stands 5'8", most 135 pounds. Most of the time they listed him as 132 or whatever, right? So he's basically saying just from the physics of it, he could beat Bruce Lee, all things being equal, meaning obviously you can't take some big guy who's not a professional fighter and then say, okay, well, he could just beat Bruce Lee off the strength of him being big, right? There's context there, but that's what he's talking about, because he's a real fighter. Fought in tournaments, fought on the street, obviously fights in movies or whatever, but that's the context.
And then somebody who's not a fighter. So even if it's a...
Now, he's saying Bruce Lee's not a fighter, and that's been the criticism of Bruce Lee in my entire lifetime, that Bruce Lee was not a fight. He didn't... People would say he fought in the street in Hong Kong. True enough, when he was young. Even some would state that he fought on the streets in Hong Kong when he was older, but there's no evidence of it. There's no, he didn't fight in, I guess, full contact, like we have MMA and boxing and so forth, right? He didn't fight like that professionally.
Amongst elite fighters, Floyd Mayweather is, and I'll defend this with anybody, is the most advanced fighter who ever lived. It should be no disputing that. No disputing that. But there's no freaking way in the world he's going to beat Mike Tyson. He could run across the street, dive off a table, and punch Mike Tyson with all he has, and it's not going to affect them.
Yeah.
It's just physics.
I don't care about weight, you know. I seen cats that are different weight classes like that knock out big guys, you know. So that has nothing to do with it. Weight has nothing to do with it. You know, if you get trust me, there's some guys 5'6", 140 pounds kick you in your nuts. Good night.
Okay, so all right, so that is Timac. He's a fanboy. He stated that he's seen some little guys knock big guys out, and then he stated, oh, he kicked him in the nuts or whatever, right? And if you have to go to those lengths to say a little guy kicks a big guy in the nuts, well, sure, of course, okay. I mean, of course, if you want to go to that length, but there's weight classes for a reason, right? There's absolute weight classes for a reason, and he said he doesn't care about weight because he's a fanboy, right? He overlooks physics. So Vlad had on, and I can't play those clips. Apparently, I can't even play that one because I just got a notification from YouTube that this is copyrighted material, whatever. But anyway, so he also asked Zab Judah, who is a professional boxer. He fought in the welterweight, junior welterweight, or light, super lightweight divisions, which are 140 pounds, 147 pounds. He's retired now, world champion in a couple of different weight classes, I believe. And so he asked Zab Judah, right? Now, Zab Judah has no history of Bruce Lee's fighting. Had no history of Bruce Lee's fighting, and just stated, oh, he only knows what he saw in the movies, that, you know, Michael Jai White couldn't beat him. He also asked Faison Love, who was, you know, Big Worm from Friday, right? Faison Love, Big Worm from Friday. He also asked him, right, and said, oh, Michael Jai White couldn't beat Bruce Lee. These are fanboys, right? These are they're pretty much fanboys because they overlook what everyone in the world knows, that if you put two professionals on par, you know, they're both professional fighters. There's weight classes for a reason. Even in boxing, there's a 7-pound weight difference is a big thing in terms of weight classes, right? 140, 147, 154, 160. So these weight classes mean something. And so you can't take a guy who's 140 pounds, which is Michael Jai White was talking about Floyd Mayweather at the time, 147, 154 max, right? And then put him in there with Mike Tyson. It just doesn't add up. And I wanted to, because Zab Judah said the same thing, that, you know, he's knocked out big guys. And I was like, they obviously weren't professional fighters, because I'm going to show you what happened to Zab Judah when he was paired with another professional fighter, his same weight size, his same weight in the same class, similar stature, and what happened to him. Just imagine what would happen if he were to fight Mike Tyson, right?
Ending strong.
I'm sorry, it happened. I only played this part of the clip. This is Zab Judah fighting Costa Tszyu, right? And they were fighting for a title. Zab Judah was the world champion at the time. Costa Tszyu was the challenger, and this is what happened here. So this is at 140 pounds, right? Now just imagine if it was Mike Tyson, who typically walked into the ring at 217 pounds, right? Hitting Zab Judah.
You have to come forward and work. And this round was Costa Tszyu's, clearly evening things up.
And ending strong. Down he goes.
Got the brother doing the stanky leg.
He's a real go.
It's over.
Yo, this is a classic. Look at him. He was upset that it got stopped, but brother, you were clearly out. You were doing anytime you get up and you fall right back down, you know, that's an automatic TKO. They're gonna stop it most likely, right? If the ref is on it, if he understands the rules. Most time you get right back up and you fall right back down, it's a TKO, right? So
You have to come forward and work. And this round was Jesus clearly evening things up.
And ending strong. Down he goes.
this cracks me up every
The
time
right
I see
hand,
it.
he's in trouble.
He's in real trouble.
It's
See.
over. JD stops the fight.
Okay, the ref immediately waved it off when he went down the second time. That brother was doing the stanky leg. I don't know what he's talking about there. Oh yeah, I beat big guys. I knocked out big guys. Was you a professional fighter? So I can imagine that you could knock out guys that are 200. That you could knock out guys that are 200 pounds that are not professional fighters, that are not used to being punched in the face like Mike Tyson. We saw how much punishment it took for Mike Tyson to get knocked out, whether it was by Evander Holyfield or by Lennox Lewis. I mean, he took hella punches, I mean, throughout his career, but those are the two times that he, that stand out, that he really got knocked out, right? That, the rest of the time that he got knocked out, his last fights or whatever, I mean, he was finished. But those two times stand out of him getting knocked out, or even maybe Buster Douglas. How it took 10 rounds of Buster Douglas just beating this man from beginning to end. 10 rounds of a heavyweight punching this dude in the face before he got knocked out. So these guys, Timac saying this thing about weight doesn't matter. It absolutely makes a difference. And I'm only bringing this up to show the delusion of certain fanboys, right? And I think some of the worst fan bases are the Kobe Bryant stands and the LeBron James, and now the race fans in boxing. Most fans of boxing are race fans, meaning they don't really care about a fighter. They just hate other fighters, so they will cheer for one fighter. And the Canelo stands right now are probably some of the worst because they're delusional. You know what I mean? When there's a delusion that goes with being a fanboy, and that's to the extreme. And we definitely shouldn't be fanboys, but I don't believe we should be fans either, right? So let's jump into the clip of the roommates introducing Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is a psychologist or whatever, clinician. He was a professor. He's from Canada. He came to fame or prominence from basically Canada. Well, I forget which exact province he was in, or state, or whatever they call it up there. But they passed a law stating that you have to call trans people by their preferred pronouns. And he took a stance and was basically like, hey, this goes against my freedom of speech. So he was like, look, I don't think I should be forced to call someone by a particular set of pronouns. I think, I have no problem with calling them, but I shouldn't be forced. It shouldn't be legislated, which he makes a good point. If it's freedom of speech, then you can't say, hey, you have to say this or you have to say that, right? That violates the freedom of speech. So those were his stances, right? So he came to prominence from that. But then he had other stances that are favorable, especially in the red pill community, against feminism and against other LGBT stuff that, and he seems right leaning, meaning he's more conservative. And he may not be a conservative, but he has a large conservative following, meaning people who were like Trump supporter type people, alt-right type people, they would follow him. Now, you can't help who you follow, but the things that he was saying appeal to these people, right? And so it's not surprising that a lot of people in the red pill community are fans of this guy. And we're going to see here the difference between being a fanboy and being a fan, which, like I said, I don't believe you should be either, but we're going to have two examples of fans, self-admitted fans of Jordan Peterson, actually, be critical of Jordan Peterson. And so even if you state that you're a fan of someone, you still have to be able to be critical. But if you can't be critical of a person that you are a fan of, then you're a fanboy, right? But like I said, I don't believe we should. I think you should respect. You can respect someone's gifts, like Michael Jai White was saying, he thinks Mayweather is the most advanced boxer or fighter, boxer ever or whatever. I happen to agree with that. I'm not a fan of Floyd, but I do respect the gifts and the skills and the work ethic and the things that he did in order to get to that elite level. So I respect those things that he was able to accomplish in the ring, and those things that some of the things that he's done outside of the ring, I respect. But I'm not a fan, so I can criticize him and be um, you know objective about him. So let's jump into the clip here. I think the brother's name is Hafiz. He's from the Roommates. He's introducing Jordan Peterson here.
5 years ago, and I was sitting down and I turned on YouTube, and then all of a sudden I see this thumbnail of this distinguished gentleman on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I said, oh, this seems like an interesting conversation. I clicked on that thumbnail and watched the video, and it absolutely changed my life. The wisdom, the knowledge, the information that this man was sharing, the things that he was talking about, the way he could construct his ideas, it was so absolutely powerful to me. And for the next couple of years, every time this man put out a video, I would watch and consume every piece of content. And I went ahead and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I said, you know what? If anything can happen, what would be an absolute honor is for me to be able to sit down and have a conversation with this man. So I made it one of my life goals. I said, without a shadow of a doubt, I would sit down and have a conversation with this man. And I would always write it down, and I always pray to God, God, give me this opportunity. I'm glad to say about over 4 years later, my prayers were answered, and I got the opportunity right now to sit down with one of my favorite human beings of all time. This individual is on my Mount Rushmore of people, right besides my father and obviously Gary Vee as well. And I am beyond ecstatic to introduce the audience to this man, and hopefully the words that he shares today will bless you as much as it has blessed me. So without further ado, please guys, welcome to the show, the one and only Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. Jordan.
Okay. All right, let me stop it here before we go on. And I couldn't watch too much more past this when I first saw this. The video, because I thought it was totally disrespectful for him to say what he just said about a man that you don't know, that you've only seen on YouTube. You don't know personally, you only seen on YouTube or read his books or seen videos of him or interviews of him, and you say you put him on the Mount Rushmore of favorite people next to your father. I thought it was totally disrespectful to his father, because your father, who raised you up, protected you, provided for you, done more than Jordan Peterson could ever do for you in a lifetime. I don't care how much knowledge he imparted to you, but to raise you, how can you ever repay your father for, one, providing the seed? And I know some people may say, hey, well, that was a moment of pleasure or whatever for him, but he still provided a seed because he could have chose not to, and then raised you up, let me even go back, picked your mother to be your mother, right? That's the first responsibility a father has to his child, is to find a good mother for his unborn child. You find a good mother. So he did all this, raised you up, provided for you, protected you, was the first example of a man that you ever saw, right? And to put someone equal to him, I thought that was totally disrespectful. I don't care how much I learned from another man that maybe my father didn't know. My father might, is not the most educated person ever in the world, and I may learn things from other men or other people that I didn't learn from my father. But there's nothing that I could ever do to repay my father for what he did for me to for me to be who I am and where I am. And I'm not going to put anyone equal to him, on that. There's no one that's ever going to be equal to what my father did for me, right? And I was pretty much like, oh my God, is this the type of interview we're going to have here? Right when I saw it. And but let me keep going here, because I thought it got worse, and I stopped it not too much longer after this.
Dr. Jordan Peterson, welcome to the show.
Hi, Hafiz. I don't think I've had a nicer introduction than that, so much appreciated. And I'm looking very much forward to talking
Doctor.
to you.
That's a pleasure. I told myself I'm not going to cry, but
I probably
means
will.
A lot to me. This means a lot to me, and I'm super grateful. So, Dr. Peterson, for those who don't know you, can you give a bit of an elevator pitch synopsis about who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff?
Okay,
And
so that's I stopped it. I was like, okay, this is nuts. I mean, you're about to cry because you're talking to another man. I mean, I don't I said, man, we have people in the red pill community, or the manosphere, or the black manosphere, whatever, talk about manhood and being men and so forth, and you're about to cry because you're talking to another man. It just weird to me. I mean, I guess I just don't operate that way. I mean, it's just, so I stopped. I pretty much stopped it when watching it, and I only went back because a couple other content creators, and I'm gonna play their clips here in just a second, reacted to something Jordan Peterson said in this interview. So I was like, okay, wait a minute. As I saw their videos, but I didn't watch the videos. I was like, okay, wait a minute. Before I watch the video, I guess I'm gonna have to go back and watch this full interview here to get the context for myself, because I like to, I don't like to be influenced by what other people think about something before I watch. If I'm gonna watch someone's commentary, I typically try to watch the video that they're giving commentary to. I try to watch it first before I hear someone else's thoughts on it, because I want to have my own thoughts. And if they align with something that someone else said, then cool. You know what I mean? But I mean, I wasn't gonna do a reaction video to it. I just like to do that, right? Especially now being a content creator myself, I really try to not consume a lot of content, reaction content, until I'm able to view something myself. So let's jump into the first clip here. This is by Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews. I chopped it up for brevity. I took a portion of it. I took maybe the main portion that will give you an idea of what's being said, because he pretty much let it play what Jordan Peterson said, and he pushed back on a talking point that Jordan Peterson made. So in the
guys already know,
in the manosphere, or the red pill community, it's often stated that average women don't want the average guy. They want the top 10, 5, 1% guy, right? They're all chasing this guy. And so they don't want the other, the average guys who they actually align with. And so, typically these women have a habit and talking points of saying, hey, look, if you just level up, then you can get the woman that you're looking to get, or whatever. You'll have access to the woman that you're looking for, right? And then some of the red pill community, the red pill stuff that pushes back on that was, hey, well, look, if everybody levels up, all that does is push the average up, which then women in turn are still going to look for there's still going to be a hierarchy, and women are still going to look for the top 10, 5% guy. So example being, if the average earning of men, or black men, I can't remember now, sometimes these stats, is 42,000, right? If it's 42,000 a year, the average salary of a man is $42,000 a year. Okay, let's say all men level up all across the board. All that's going to do is push the average up. Let's say the average goes up to 50,000, right? But then guess what? There's still going to be guys who are earning 2 million, $3 million a year, 500,000, 200,000. It's still going to be those. It's still going to be those guys who are in the higher tiers. And then guess what? There's still going to be some guys who can't level up to the 50,000 that are only making 10, 20, 30,000. So though the average gets pushed up, there's still a bell curve, so to speak. And women are still going to want those guys in the top 1, 5, 10%. So, but anyway, so this is kind of the conversation, and MTR is going to address what Jordan Peterson says here. And he's going to play it so you guys will hear. Here goes.
And get into it. As you guys already know, I am an avid fan of Jordan Peterson. I love the things that he talks about. He was up on the Roommates podcast and gave a couple of quick points that a lot of people saw was anti to this space.
Okay, so now you notice he stated he was an avid fan, but then let's understand the difference in how he, as an avid fan, and he self-admitted a fan, how he then responds to some things that are, like he said, anti to this space.
But I wanted to break it down from my perspective. Without further ado.
So something else I've been hearing, Dr. Peterson, a lot of young men have been sharing with me, and I'm not sure how much you've heard of it or experienced it. They've been sharing that, that they feel as though the average woman has no desire for the average male, and that because of things like social media, online dating, things along those lines, as well as just some of the female empowerment, where a lot of women have this is what they say, an elevated sense of self, that now they feel like they're above a lot of these average males, which also contributes to a disparity between young adults being able to connect and form meaningful relationships.
Yeah, well, women are more picky in their mate choices than men, especially sexually. That's the case in every culture. It's not surprising, because women have more at stake sexually than men do.
Very true.
Per episode, because men don't get pregnant, obviously. And so that female pickiness that's the case. That's definitely true.
Here's the thing. I agree with him when he says pickiness, but a lot of what we talk about from the space as well is being accountable for the picks, and being accountable for the picks before it's too late. Because yes, you can be picky, but are you picking correct? But going back to Hafiz's initial assertion, the idea that hypergamy, which Dr. Peterson talks about a lot, this idea that most women go to the men that's highest on the dominance hierarchy. But if women are hit with this pandering information regarding what they look like, how much that they weigh, and no, people are not telling them the truth, then they might actually think that they were 8, 9, or 10 when they were 2, 3, or 4. Right? So it goes on to say is that a dude who's a 5, who is in the dating realm of another young lady that's a 5 who thinks that she's a 9, is not getting looked at by that woman because she's looking to date up. So she's looking for 9s and 10s as well. So I think it was a fair point. I probably would have worded it a little bit differently, but let's keep on hearing what Dr. Peterson has to say.
Okay, see that there are already, so there's critique there. There isn't just, okay, blind fanboyism in terms of, no pushback, right? Now, you could say, okay, Hafiz brought him on the program to interview him, but better interviews, because how much more could you have gotten out of him if you would have maybe pushed back in some regards? Even if it's just to play devil's advocate, to have him expound upon a particular issue, as opposed to just you ask a question and then whatever answer he gives, you just let that go and not, maybe, okay, well, what about, this, or wait a minute, what about, the women who are, it's still hypergamous to if she's a 2, 3, or 4, it's still hypergamous for her to get with a dude that's a 4, 5, or 6. uh, that would have then maybe he would have expounded upon the answer, and then you could get more out of him as opposed to just the initial answer and you just accept it and move on because you think his word is law and it's gold or whatever. So let's keep going.
Whether it's worse now or not, I doubt if it is. I would say to young men who are irritated at women is, if you're irritated at women, as a class of creature, there's something wrong with you because they're right. You're wrong.
Women are right. You're wrong.
They're right to not pick you. If they're not picking you, it's because they're right.
Wow.
Now, that
See, right there is where a lot of, and it's not just black pill, red pill guys, black, from the black manosphere, it's the manosphere in general. People who are anti-red pill jumped on this as well. I saw so many reaction videos to this. I was like, wow, I didn't know it was that big when it came out. Because like I said, I'm not subscribed to the roommates. I am to MTR. I think he missed it when he was there while he was out. But going back and looking at it, their reviews or whatever, or before their reviews, I went back and looked at them. It was like just doing research and was like, wow, I didn't know this was a thing because I didn't know what he said. And so right here, he just said, wow, because that goes against a lot of what is taught. And I'm sure that he teaches young men in the red pill community. But because as Jordan Peterson said, and you are dang near crying when you interview him or introduce him, you don't push back and just expound upon it. What makes them right? I would have had to ask, what makes women right? Yeah, I understand that they pick men, but if they are on, they are on the lower end, then yes, they try to get the best deal that they could get, but the best deal that they could get, maybe, they don't have there's a whole bunch, and MTR said something that I agree with about, I'll just let him say it, but that's why I said I did the thing, and I was like, wait a minute, Jordan Peterson is even worse off than I am, right? I've been married 18 years, so I'm out of the dating market. I'm not in it, so I don't know exactly how it goes. He's been out 38 years. He's been married, so he has less of a clue of what's going on in the dating than I do. You know what I mean? So I would have pushed back if I was the brother Hafiz.
that might get, I know that's a terrible thing to say, and I know perfectly well, it wasn't like I was particularly successful with girls when I was young.
Pay attention.
So I know what that rejection is like. I know what that fear is like. I don't know it as well as some men know it because I wasn't rejected outright.
Pay attention.
So, but what you have to understand is that, what do you expect from women? If you got pregnant because you had sex, you'd be pretty damn choosy too.
Yes.
So,
And that's what a lot of us say, right?
Yes, I would be.
pull in a bit, and then, well, don't they find you attractive? Well, maybe you're not. Like, have you paid attention to how you dress? Do you have a plan?
Yeah.
Are you as educated as you could be?
Yes.
Are you a liar? Are you a rabid pornography user?
Yeah. Is your
maybe
room
that's
clean?
undermining your motivation to see.
All of what he said is not wrong, but like I said, I still would have. They're right. In a lot of regards, they have a self-inflated. He doesn't even factor in the whole thing that because the world is so connected now that at least even in my time back in the 90s, women were pretty much locked in to have to deal with the dudes in her city or maybe a surrounding city, but not across the state or across the world. Some of these chicks are getting flown out to Dubai because there's a rich guy in Dubai that can fly them out to Dubai, so they don't have to even think about the guys that are local who are their age, their peers age-wise, who obviously most of those guys are not making money that they can fly them out to Dubai, but there's some millionaire in Dubai that says, okay, well, hey, I can reach out to this girl on Instagram and fly her out. So there's no factoring of any of that stuff, and there's so much nuance there that they're just flat out, they're right, you're wrong. Silly. I would have pushed back a little bit.
Seek out a woman and grow yourself up.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah,
if
we
you're
have to do all
rejected
that.
constantly and you're out there really trying, because that's another thing to ask yourself as well. How
Some of
many
this is
women
fair
have you
points
actually asked out?
he's making.
Yeah.
And are you so sure that you're not picking women who will certainly reject you because you're trying to bat out of your league? Because you might be. So,
And see, and it's the same on the other side. If men are batting out of their league, so are women. You know what I mean? Like I said, and again, it biologically it makes sense that that they should try to get the best deal that they can, but they don't often do that.
and I'm speaking about this as a clinician too, because I had plenty of men in my practice who were, radically unsuccessful with women. I had one man in particular. He was so afraid of women, he couldn't use the phone. He was too afraid of everyone to use the phone. And he had been bullied like mad, and he had his problems. So
Okay, let me pause it right there, because here's the thing. Dr. Jordan Peterson, in this particular statement right here, is right and wrong at the same time. But you have to understand, I would say, two key things about him. Okay, two key things. Number one, he's been with his wife for 30 plus years. He has no idea what the dating game today is like, nor does he care. So you have to understand that he's not in it. So when you talk about the infiltration of social media or the influx of IG this or dating apps that, he is not that akin and or accustomed to what modern dating is like today.
Right, 38 years. I think when I did the research, I think it's 38 years that he's been married. So like 20 years longer than I've been married. That's, yeah, I mean, he longer, almost married longer than I've been alive almost. I mean, I'm 48, but I mean, just, additional 10 years. I mean, he's been, and I think he even said that they were together. So he didn't date a lot, right? During the time that he didn't date a lot. So it was kind of, he found a girl in high school or whatever, maybe at college, and you got locked down, and he's been locked down ever since. So he has no clue. And to what MTR says, he doesn't care. Like, I mean, it's obvious. Why should he care, right? Because he's not in it.
Here's the second point that I think that it's important from a contextual perspective. Dr. Peterson starts out at the basics of clean your room before you worry about anything else that's going on in their life. And first, worry about internal. So he comes from this perspective of just the basics for male improvement. Now, the thing is everything that he said after that, I completely 100% agree with, because I think just as much as there's delusional women out there, there are dudes that are delusional as well. Just like I talk to you guys ad nauseum about not being mad at women, right? Like, and being fully and truly accountable for yourself and understanding the matrix that you live in and optimizing yourself so you can get the best results out of life, so you can get the most joy and happiness out of life. However, within all of that, I do think that he is wrong to just say the flat out statement, they are right, you are wrong. And I think the reason that he's saying that is because he's coming from a place of true, knowledgeable intention about the dating marketplace, but not the modern dating marketplace. Because I go over many different times when they're not right. Here's an example.
Yeah, and so MTR actually played an interview, I guess a panel of women, men and women, and they were on some crazy stuff. But the link to his video will be in the description. Go check out the brother's video in full, and you'll get the full context. Matter of fact, all of the links of the videos will be in the description, the roommates, so you can look at that in full context, and MTR's video as well. And let's jump into the last clip, and this is by Poor Man's Podcast. He reacted to pretty much the same thing, and let's hear his take on it as well.
in a bit, and then, well, don't they find you attractive? Well, maybe you're not.
Hold on. So I, I just picked it up right here to where it kind of they covered the same thing, so I didn't want to play it all again of what Peterson was saying, but he's reacting to pretty much the same part that NTR reacted to just a second ago here.
So, clue in a bit. And then, well, don't they find you attractive? Well, maybe you're not.
Right.
Like, have you paid attention to how you dress? Do you have a plan? Are you as educated as you could be? Are you a liar? Are you a rabid pornography user? Because maybe that's undermining your motivation to seek out a woman and grow yourself up. It's like, if you're rejected constantly and you're out there really trying, because that's another thing to ask yourself is, well, how many women have you actually asked out? And are you so sure that you're not picking women who will certainly reject you because you're trying to bat out of your league? Because you might be. So, and I'm speaking about this as a clinician too, because I had plenty of men in my practice who were, radically unsuccessful with women. I had one man in particular. He was so afraid of women he couldn't use the phone. He was too afraid of everyone to use the phone, and he had been bullied like mad, and he had his problems. So I know what this is like, but pornography is a big problem. It's a big problem. It's a real curse, that pornography.
See, what makes me so disappointed about a lot of what Jordan Peterson is doing right now, because I understand what I understand that he's all about self-accountability, and I'm really praying that this is not a PR move because he's seen as right-leaning to try to balance out a little bit. So I'm hoping this isn't a PR move. I think that he has a little bit more backbone. I am a huge fan of Jordan Peterson, by the way. So I'm assuming he has a little bit more backbone than that, right? So the other thing it could be.
Okay, let me stop him real quick here. So you notice he said he's a huge fan of Jordan Peterson also. But look at the difference. There's no crying. There's no getting choked up. There is actual objective critique. So that's what I was like, okay, I still don't like brother saying I'm a fan of this. Yeah. Okay. But if you're going to say you're a fan, okay, fine. But at least be able to be objective and be able to critique someone, right? And the first brother didn't do it. And I think he's more of a fanboy than even a fan, because there was absolute no critique. And again, I mean, yes, he's interviewing him. He's not there to debate him. And in an interview, it doesn't have to turn into a debate, but you can actually ask questions or push back just to get more out of the interview. I mean, to get more out of the person that you're interviewing, you can ask a follow-up question. You can, play devil's advocate, even if you agree with them. I mean, sometimes it's just to push back. The person that I see he's no longer alive. I think he passed in 2008, was Tim Russert of MSNBC, Meet the Press. I don't think I've ever seen anyone interview people as well as Tim Russert did. And the reason, and here's the thing with Tim Russert, I never really knew where he stood politically, whether he was a Democrat or Republican or liberal, conservative. I really never knew. And to this day, I don't. Maybe it's out there. Maybe his friends have stated what he was or whatever. But at the time when he was alive, I didn't know, and I used to watch that show all the time because I liked the way he interviewed people, and his philosophy with interviewing people was that whatever stance a person has on any particular topic, he took the opposite side of it. And I was like, wow, that when I just sat and thought about it, I was like, wow, you could really get a good interview out of a person, because one of the more famous things interviews was with him and David Duke, when David Duke was running for the governor of Louisiana, I believe it was. And if there was such thing as viral, well, I guess it was in 2008, but that I mean, not in 2008, that's when he died. I mean, but when was that? That one made the rounds of Blog Talk Radio or terrestrial radio or whatever. It was the today's equivalent of going viral back then, of him and the KKK guy, David Duke. And you know, I always thought about that. I was like, oh, that's an excellent point to, you know, take. See, now I appreciate his mindset of interviewing people, but you know, I'm not a fan because, you know, I could be critical of Tim Russert, and I would never say like I don't know him, you know. But that one particular thing that I took from him was like, okay, you could take from people and it's not a problem. You could take knowledge from other people, it's not a problem. Or, you know, you see something that you think is a great skill to implement, to have in your toolbox, implement it. And I think that's one. So when I interview anyone, it's always, okay, I find out their positions on something and I take the opposite side, even if I agree with them. But I'm not gonna get. I've seen interviews where people were just, well, I agree. I agree with everything, and then they turn into a monologue and they're not interviewing anyone anymore. But he always got the best out of a person to say, hey, here's what you said here. You know, do you still stand by it? You know, or what about this? Here's the opposite of this, or whatever. So I thought that was a good point. But anyway, let me keep going.
Is that he knows that this is a male-based channel, and he's trying to give the only option that men as individuals have to solve a multifaceted problem. The only problem that I have with that is Jordan knows that this is a multifaceted problem. Yeah, he's putting all of the blame on the men. And this is what we see a lot in society. Oh, you can't support a family on a single income because the rate of inflation is increasing faster than the rate of wages? That's just your problem as a man. You got to work harder. Right? You see men in college, men are dropping out faster than ever because they were told that they were the source of all of the problems and were expected to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get a degree that was going to be useless. And a lot of men sat back and said, hey, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. So men dropped out of college.
If male enrollment falls below a certain percentage, and it looks like it's something like 40%, then the females start not going too.
And Jordan understands that when men start to drop out of society, that's when things will start to crumble. And unfortunately, that's where it looks like it's going.
In my opinion, because it's an easy out. And so we don't know what the consequences of that are. We're starting to understand some of them. But if you were better, you'd be more successful with women. So you have to have that in your mind, and you cannot be angry at women. It's stupid.
I agree.
Women,
I agree with that.
That's
Yeah, and that's one of the, like I said, I didn't disagree with what he was saying in the interview. I was like, it actually was a pretty good interview. I just was like, why is this brother about to cry and all this kind of stuff? So it wasn't, and I don't care about him saying stuff about the red pill. That's opposite of red pill, because I'm not necessarily red pill. Some of the things that mindset wise, but I wouldn't label myself like that or whatever. I don't even know what it means to be red pill, whatever. But nonetheless, a lot of things that I see or believe line up with that thought process, but I don't believe in labeling myself with certain things or whatever. But I agree with him. What is being upset with an entire demographic? What is that going to do for you? It isn't going to solve the problem. And by design, I'm an IT guy, and my thing is to solve problems. Let's solve the problem. But being upset and mad at the other side of your opposite, or your complement, I should say, gender, is not going to solve the problem.
It's like women being angry at men.
I agree.
It's a sign of psychological trouble. That.
So you feel as though Dr. Peterson is that, for the men who are complaining about the standards of women today and it being elevated, that it's not so much a focus of pointing the finger at them not choosing them, but more so looking in the mirror and asking themselves what can they do to improve themselves to be so desirable, instead of focusing simply in on
just work harder, guys.
Be a little stronger, be a little stronger, dress a little better.
Just work a little
speak
harder.
A little more clearly.
Maybe you can beat
aim
that
a
rate of
little higher.
inflation.
Like, and practice that, you know, and that'll work. Now, you know, I know
It's only going to work it's only going to work to so far, because if you're not attractive, because he stated that earlier, if you're not attractive, you're just not attractive. There's nothing you can do about that. If you're short and women like taller dudes, there's nothing that you could do about that, right? There's certain things. I mean, so it's just, and I get it. What Poor Man's Podcast was saying here. Trey was saying that maybe he's just saying what men can do to try to fix the problem or whatever. But it's multifaceted. So it isn't just that simple that men get better and then the women will come in. It's not that simple, and I think there should be more pushback or whatever.
that's more difficult for some people than others, because some people bear incredibly difficult developmental burdens.
Right.
You know, and I'm not saying that this is easy, but I'm saying that it's a useful reaction. Like, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Complain about women? You know, I've seen that in men. I went out with a group of men who were having trouble with their wives, and they'd gone off to this like couples retreat, and it was mostly rubbish, although they were trying a bit to get their lives together. And I spent a whole day with them. There were 3 of them, and one of them was a guy that I'd known for quite a while, and every single word he said was a lie. And all these 3 did the whole day was complain about their wives. And I thought, what the hell's wrong with you guys? Like, you picked them. They're these women you picked, you know, and maybe they have their flaws, but they're your wives.
Yeah.
And that's how you talk about them? And you think they're the problem? You're so dumb that you don't even know that you shouldn't badmouth your wife. Just because she's your wife. Like when Tammy and I got married, we had a discussion about that. It's like, she has her flaws and I have my flaws, but I'm her husband and she's my wife. And there's a certain respect that goes along with that category.
I completely
if you
agree.
have any sense.
Right, and that's probably one of the things that he said that I resonated with mostly in that interview. That, hey, you know, there's a certain level of respect once you get married. It's like you don't badmouth your spouse to someone else, and it's just a because we all have faults, so you don't go out here and just, oh well, she's this, she's that, and it's silly and you know, and just no respect there.
And so that's an extension of the same thing. You know, it's best to look to yourself. Now and then you can, you know, think.
And this is why I say Jordan is just kind of blaming men for the problems without context of the full conversation, even though he knows the context of the full conversation. He knows that men have more to lose in divorce than women. Maybe that's why they're just complaining amongst their friends instead of doing the alternative, which is divorce. Maybe they don't want to lose their children. Maybe they don't want to lose their house. Maybe they don't want to have to lose half of their pension and then have to start over at 58 years old, right? So that instead of quitting out, which is what most women do, at 70% women are filing for divorce because they have nothing to lose. Instead of that, maybe they're trying to stick it out because they know that 90% of the time, it's the woman that gets custody of the children, even if the father can prove that he provides better than her, right? And again, remember that this is an equal society. 90% of the time, the woman will get custody, majority of the custody of the children. Maybe he doesn't want to lose access to his children because he realizes that a man being in the household is the most important component to a child's life, right? So without looking at that whole context, Jordan's just kind of saying, well, they're cowards because they're just talking about their wives. Well, what's the alternative, Jordan? Divorce? I don't think that's a good option for them. Instead of talking about the truth of the matter, which is that women are incentivized to get a divorce. They get half of everything plus alimony and child support. Why wouldn't you get out of something that's hard? It's like me being on a team that has to row a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, but my teammate, if he quits at any moment, he gets majority of the things, right? Of course, then he has more incentive to leave that marriage. And these are things that we can affect now, but we just choose not to, and we just ignore them and put the blame on men. And what's going to happen is what we're seeing. More and more men are going to drop out, and things are going to get more and more dangerous, and the society is probably going to fail.
Okay.
So
All right. So that was the end. I wanted him to finish that thought there. And how much better of an interview would it have been if Hafiz would have stated that in that situation, in that situation when he said the men are just complaining about their wives, what could you have gained? What other insight could you have gained if we would have simply, if he would have simply asked, well, what alternative do they have if they get divorced? I mean, if they divorce, they're most likely gonna, not have custody of their children. They are going to, they may have to pay alimony. I mean, what is it better for them to stay and complain, or is it? I mean, yeah, they're in it, and the wives have some faults or whatever, but is it better for them to stay and just deal with the faults, or is it better for them to divorce and then lose money, children, whatever it is, right? How much better would it have been if you just, and that's not turning that interview into a debate. It's following up. It's pushing back a little bit. It's like, okay, you just call these guys dumb or stupid or whatever he called them. But now you're asking a follow-up. Well, maybe it's deeper than them just being stupid. Yeah, they picked the women, but and that's and see and being a fan or fanboy, you can't do it. I mean, you can't do that, right? And like I said, MTR and Poor Man's podcast, they both stated that they were fans, but you saw the difference. They were able to critique and push back and have a level of, okay, well, yeah, he's wrong here, right? And I just don't believe that brother's going to do that. Not if he's dang near about to cry and he's putting, someone that you don't know personally on a Mount Rushmore alongside your dad. Like, I mean, that's crazy. And like I said, so I started it off with, sports, but obviously you see the fanboy thing can go into anything to where there's some type of celebrity celebrity personality or whatever, and it's clear, but I just do not believe brothers should get into the definitely not the fanboy thing. But like I said, if you're going to call yourself a fan of something, be able to be critical and objective, and like I said, I think the sports fans are the worst fans, the worst fanboys, because with all this information out here, the critical thinking is at an all-time low, and most people have so much information at the tips of their fingers, right on their phones. I mean, you have more information that's held in the Library of Congress, or the library, and or both of them combined, the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, or the Library of Cairo. I mean, you have so much information at the tips of your fingers, and for people to blatantly, because they are devoted to a particular athlete or a particular sports team. I mean, it is crazy. Some of the wildest ones that I hear, right? Yeah, it just to run them down. Serena Williams is the greatest female tennis player of all times. I mean, like, how, when she's still, in terms of majors, she's still chasing Margaret Court. Margaret Court is 24, she has 23. I don't necessarily seeing her catch her at this point, right? Or they will even exaggerate and say she's the greatest tennis player of all times. Not even female, just tennis player of all times, right? When obviously, male and female tennis, and she even said it. She was like, "No, I'm not playing the men. The men will kill me." She stated in a I think it was on Fallon or one of them shows at night. Men and women's tennis, two totally different things. They're not on the same level. No matter what happened back in the day when Billie Jean King played the old over out of shape over the hill guy. I can't think of his name. Um, this whole debate that they love, and this is for ratings, but they know this debate is over. The whole who's the GOAT thing, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, it's that debate is way over. That the number, any measurement that you want to look at, except for longevity stats, LeBron is going to have more longevity stats than Michael Jordan because he played 20. He's going to play 20 years easy, right? If not more than 20 years. He's definitely going to play long enough to catch Kareem's record. That's what he's shooting for. Most of the stats that he's leading in are longevity stats. So if a guy plays 20 years and another guy plays 15, of course the guy with 20 years is going to have more points, more et cetera, et cetera, et cetera than the other guy. But you look at him peak to peak. Look at who did more Michael Jordan is still going to do more in 20 years, in 15 years than what LeBron James did in 20. But Michael Jordan's peak was a lot higher than LeBron's. I mean, you take the advanced metrics, it's not close, right? And even the ones that LeBron may lead in terms of advanced metrics, I think it's field goal percentage, and it's by a fraction, right? It's probably the plus or minus, it's equal, but he did way more than this guy did. And I mean, really, if you look at it, Michael Jordan did the most of his damage when he was with the Bulls, and that was officially they counted 13 years, but there were 2 years. The second year, I think he was a broken foot, and the second year he had a broken foot, and then he came back a few games, and then the playoffs. That's when he went 63 on Boston, and then so he was out most of that season. And then when he retired and he came back, was that 94, 95? I think it was. I think he played like 17 games, and they got into the playoffs, and they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, got bounced by the Orlando Magic. So, but they count those 2 years, right? So 13 total years with the Bulls, but he really played 11, and he did the majority of the damage that he did in those 11 years with the Bulls, right? But you count all 15 years, he still did more than, right? And then what's another one? They love to put Kobe Bryant in the Kobe Bryant top 10 all time. Top 10 all time. It was like, Kobe Bryant's not top 10 all time. They think it's an insult to say Kobe Bryant's top 15 or top 20 all time. Of all the thousands of players, all the great players, it's not an insult to say Kobe Bryant is top 15 or top 20 all time, right? I mean, and then they'll say, why is Kobe not in the GOAT conversation? Because it's clear he's not the greatest shooting forward of all time. That's Michael Jordan. So how can you ever be called the GOAT, the greatest of all time in anything, when you're not the greatest in your position? It doesn't. I mean, it's silly. I mean, he was Michael Jordan 0.5. He wasn't better than Michael Jordan. I mean, it's clear he was a less efficient player than Michael Jordan. I think he was his field goal. I mean, I could be pulling up all these stats, but there's plenty of videos that break down all the stats and numbers. I think he was a 45% field goal shooter for a career and never shot over 47%. Michael Jordan was shooting like 50 something percent. I mean, dang near finished near 50% for his whole career, including the Washington Wizard years. I mean, it's not close, right? I mean, there's certain things that are, and then when you mention Kobe Bryant went down in history, and this is, not to disparage him or anything. This is just talking about the numbers. He missed the most shots in NBA history. You can't get around that stat. He missed the most shots in a single season in the NBA history, right? What does that say? If you miss that many shots, it means he jacked up a lot of shots, and then it also meant that he took bad shots. He's often referred to as the greatest bad shot maker in history, and I'll agree with that, right? He'll take some bad shots and he'll make a lot of them. But to say, people act like it's blasphemy to say he's not in the top 10. I'm like, okay, who's he greater than? I mean, who's he gonna bump out of the top 10, right? If you take Michael Jordan, number one, right, and I put him there because he put up numbers. They love to say um, Kareem is better than Jordan, right? But I'm like, here's a guy that's 6'6", putting up the same numbers that a guy that's 7 feet 7'1" did. But then here's the difference: Michael Jordan was the alpha on his team. Kareem wasn't when Magic got there, right? Jordan was often the best player on both sides of the court, on both sides of the ball. On the floor at any given time, no matter who he played against, right? That's difficult for somebody to say, right? Um, so, but put Kareem there, two or three or whatever. Bill Russell, you still have to put him, even though there's an asterisk there by the 11 titles. You know, giving him 5.5 titles because it wasn't the modern era, but still he dominated his era, right? Can't help when you played. Um, Magic, to me, and LeBron's not two or three to me, for even four, just based on the numbers in terms of it took him more years to do things, to pass certain records that Larry Bird had, and what Larry Bird played, what, I think 13 total years. And it took LeBron 15, 16 years to catch some of the things that Bird did in terms of some of the numbers, and then their lifetime stats, in terms of averages, are close. And I just put him, when he won that last title, above Larry Bird. And this is Larry Bird playing with a bad back for the probably last 3-4 years of his career, right? But but he's 4 5. Oh, Magic. I'm sorry, Magic would be 4, LeBron 5, Bird 6, and then you have, to me, it's no way that, and then saying Tim Duncan was a better player in the era than Kobe Bryant. He was. When you are called the greatest power forward in history, so you're the best at your position, you're gonna make the top 10, right? So there's Duncan there, Shaq there. And I'm not putting them in any order. I'm just putting the last 10 that I can think of right off the top of my head. Uh, why am I forgetting his name? There's Shaq. Who did I say? I said Tim Duncan. I'm saying Shaq, Wilt Chamberlain. I don't know how I was forgetting his name. That's who I was thinking of. Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq, and then I'm taking um, I'm taking Hakeem Olajuwon, because nobody did what he did to win every single award in a season, plus winning the title. When you win Defensive Player of the Year, I think he won a scoring title. He won Finals MVP. I think he won MVP. He won the title that year. Rebounding. I mean, it's insane to have something like that. So it's an argument that he's one of. I mean, I think he was really more like a power forward, but I mean, he played at center. But anyway, so Kobe being in the top 15 is not an insult. I mean, it's just all time. I mean, but he just has, when you're looking at the greatest, you have to you don't judge by things that they did great. They all did so much great, but you have to look at the things that they did bad, right? Kobe has too many losers to be in the top 10. Things that he did bad, right? I mean, we talked about the shooting percentage and certain things, right? There's certain things that he just did bad that would exclude you from the top 10. Anyway, it's been a good stream. We have to get away from being fanboys, and I don't even want to start on the boxing and the Canelo thing. I'll be here talking about that foolishness forever. The fanboys are out of hand on social media, and I just stay. I think it's just best to stay away from calling yourself a fan of another dude, or of a team or anything like that. That's why I like the sport of boxing. I like combat sports, but I never say I'm a fan of it, right? Because when I move into that realm, then am I going to still be objective, right? They have their issues, right? Boxing has its issues. Boxing has there's too many there's too much of not being able to get the fights that you want in a timely manner, right? Because there's so many different associations, there's so many different sanctioning bodies, there's so many different uh promoters. They want to try to, some promoters protect their fighters. They don't want to make these fights happen because their fighter's going to lose, or they think their fighter's going to lose. I mean, there's just too much of that, right? There's too much politics in boxing. I mean, some of the things that the WBC had been doing lately, giving up franchise belts when dudes are getting stripped, and they are vacating belts to not fight certain people, and then you give them a franchise belt with Canelo and Lomachenko, all this silliness, right? So there's issues with boxing, and then MMA. We don't even talk about the issues with that, right? It's a monopoly where these guys are under contract, and they're the manager and promoter, and but a good critique is you get the fights that you want to see, right? They, they're gonna make the fights for the most part, right? They're gonna make the fights, and then these guys don't get paid, and that's really the only reason why certain guys don't fight. It's one of the reasons why John Jones hasn't fought at heavyweight. It's like, hey, he wants to get paid more, and it's like, okay, well, they're not gonna pay you more. It's the UFC. I mean, it's not boxing. It's not a free market. There's only one place in town. If you want to fight at the highest level, MMA, you want to fight at the highest level, it's UFC, right? There's other lower levels that you could fight, Bellator and some of this other stuff, but at the highest level is UFC. They're the only game in town, so you have to put. So hey, we don't as a manager, we try to get as much money as possible, but as a promoter, we try to give you as the least amount of money as possible. And so that's what's happening over there. It's a monopoly, and in order for it to really blow up, because people are like, oh, it's going to overtake boxing. It's never going to overtake boxing because of the pay disparity, right? But for the damage that those guys are taking, to get paid peanuts. That's why all these guys are coming over to fight Jake Paul. I mean, hell, I would too if I can make 10, 20, 30 million to fight Jake Paul. I definitely. Some people say Tyron Woodley took a dive. I don't think he took a dive. I think he just got socked, and it is what it is. But that's why those guys are gonna go over there and fight. But anyway, the fanboy thing is a problem. We just have to as men, respect the gifts and the strengths that someone else has, the knowledge and so forth. Take what you can, and learn from someone else, and build and respect them. You can even congratulate on someone on their gifts. Hey man, great fighter, very smart guy, whatever. But going overboard like the brother did with he choking up, damn near crying over someone that you never met before, and then putting him on the same plane as his father. I thought that was not a good look. I didn't think that was a good look at all. I thought that was, especially someone who counsels younger men. They shouldn't. That's not a good look. But anyway, those are my final thoughts, brothers. Peace, Rebel family.